starting the recording now. Okay, so King's Row, is there anything specific that you wanted to look at? Lots of people have been wanting to like look at positioning specifically, but is there anything?
That's what I was gonna ask about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mainly just my positioning because I think I play Batiste on both sides. So.
Okay. Just positioning in general. Anything specific about it, like when to push, where you should be in rotations.
Just
blah, blah,
where
blah.
I should be, I think, for the most part.
Okay. This is attack. Okay. So, positioning things. We mentioned last night how to avoid sitting like on top of cart, right? You remember me mentioning that? You did that a bunch of times. Okay.
Okay.
So, continuing on with like that idea, right? You just jumped on top of a bus and you don't know what characters they have,
Yeah.
right? And they do have an Ash Mercy, right?
Yeah.
So,
it's kind of dangerous.
right? Even if they weren't running snipers, getting pressured early, forcing your shift before we rotate is a big deal, okay? As bad. So whether that's like a Mei, whether that's a Kree, Echo, like any of these characters, right? Like any sort of burst damage that forces you to use your shift is going to be a big deal, right? So when I talk about like use scouting early, the emphasis is on like if it is safe, okay? So if we have a Sig shield and then you can scout with that, that's safe, right? So on defense, we're talking about like sitting someone up here that could be you and having a Sig shield in front of you, like that's safe, right? But if you are like, unless you're playing like every other character besides like maybe Brig, like every other support that you'd be playing, there's no reason for you to scout unless you either know what they have, right, and you know what their DPS are, so it's not like as big of a threat, and you can just looking for like their supports or something, right? Um, or if you have a shield or something, right?
Okay.
So you generally shouldn't be scouting unless you already know what comp they have, right? And then you're like, oh, they don't have anything that's gonna poke me out or whatever. I can look at a jump off here to see like where they are, like positional scouting, right?
Okay.
But at the start of fights where you have limited information on their comp, that's when you play safer. When you know their comp, you can do more positional scouting or like ability scouting, whatever you want to do, right? But in terms of like straight up comp scouting, you need to be a lot more careful. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, yeah, okay, that's fine. Playing in there, that's fine.
I crossed way too late.
Yeah,
So was like Bjorn, I feel like too.
yeah, you both crossed way too late.
Yeah, I think Bjorn actually gets picked here.
I think she does. She get pulled. Okay. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. Okay. So
Let's see how far we are.
yeah, your positioning itself, okay, like the spacing is the problem, but the positioning, like how you've angled yourself, is good, right?
Okay.
So I want to make sure you understand that. Like this is good. Like playing on the poster is good. Why? Because they can't pull you. It's very hard for them to pull, and they can't spam you, right?
Yeah.
So playing the poster would be better than like playing like in here, right? Because both are giving you the same benefits, but you are cutting off the angle from the enemy team so they can't spam you. So that is good, right? But you want to be as close as to the team as possible without, um, while still like closing off those angles, right? So that would probably be about the poster,
Okay.
right? Um, yeah, yep. Both you and Bjorn rotated too late. It was a whole team
Bjorn
problem.
definitely gets picked here. Yep.
Yeah, it was a whole team problem though. So, like individually, you guys can rotate faster, but there are also team stuff we can do. So here Play a neutral position, it's fine. Oh, the other thing that both you and Bjorn need to pay attention more to, but since we're talking about you, so you want to be out of range of the pull, right? So I mentioned it on the front choke, but just generally speaking, if they have something they're gonna combo with it, dynamite, fire strike, or echo, and against this comp, right? You really need to make sure that you're not getting pulled by it, right? Because if it's just our Sig that gets pulled, you can just heal him up, right? But if they hit you, they hit Bjorn, and they hit our Sig with like a fire strike, then
Yeah,
it's
we're just
probably
dead.
gonna, like that's hard, right? Because it's forcing out more resources from us, and it gives them chances to follow up, right?
Okay.
In a case like this, it's more just like building all charge, poking you guys out, forcing resources. But in a case where it's like more even, so say we're on statue or something, actually let's say we're close, let's say we're more like here. If they hit that and they hit 2 or 3 or more with a fire strike, that's a really good engagement tool, right? So pull is can set up like poke and all charge and whatever, forcing resources, but it's also a very good opener, right? So like a pull fire strike, a pull with dynamite, very good opener, right? And you guys need to avoid that as much as possible, okay? So if you find yourself in a position where you think you guys are going to get pulled or whatever, this is where you be playing the corner like this, right? Right? You don't need to be showing completely to heal hammer, right? You can just do little peeks. Um, if you want to be super safe about it, you could like throw it off the wall or something just to get him with the splash damage, right? But then there's obviously Wisp and Clay doing their thing. So,
Yeah.
um, right. But cutting it with the corners or like spacing out so you are just out of range of the pull, that's really important. Not going to be the case in like rotations and stuff, but that's why you need to have shift for the rotation, right?
Mm-hmm.
In case they do pull dynamite or pull fire strike or whatever the team's comp is, right? Um, but if we're just in like more of a spam fight, then you want to play just out of range of the pull, okay?
Yeah.
And I feel like I might be giving you a little bit of conflicting messages, but you want to
Mm-hmm.
be just outside the range, but as close as possible,
Okay.
right? So it's a fine line. Um, but it's different in rotation. But if it's just like a fight when you guys are poking or whatever, just outside the range, but as close as possible. That's what you're aiming for.
Okay.
Okay. And you're not gonna get first try, and that's okay, right? Like you're gonna get pulled by some things, and like shit happens. It's fine,
Yeah.
right? But we want to try and optimize it as much as possible. Um, so especially if we're playing Zen Bap, if you get hit by something like that and you get your shift forced, either you're shifting to heal yourself and that's an important resource, or Bjorn has to shift Harmony to you, which is not going to be beneficial to the team in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
right? She wants to put it on the off angle or the Hanzo, the Echo, Torb, whoever it ends up being, right? Um, Sometimes Clay, whoever's playing the off angle, that's where she wants Harmony, right? But if she has to
Okay.
shift that to you, then whoever's playing the offense has to play more passive, and then we can't force resources. We can't look for picks. Sometimes it makes our rotations harder. Like it messes with a lot of things in spam, right? So one resource
Mm-hmm.
getting shifted from one person to another can like throw off a fight, right? It doesn't always look like that, but it can, right? When you get like super crisp, clean engagements and stuff, and you're working towards like ideal Overwatch, like a single ability out of place can fuck with the whole comp plan,
Yeah.
right?
Playing really aggro there.
Mm. Yeah. So that pull, you didn't really have a choice. Like you obviously have to play in range, but that's fine because you're
Yeah.
next to a corner, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you can kite it a lot easier. And you have an Orisa in front of you, so she's probably gonna take most of that damage. So like that's okay, right? But if you get caught in the open, so if you are more towards the lamppost and you get pulled here and they hit a fire strike, that's like a
Yeah.
different story,
Then
right?
you're just dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fire strike dynamite, big combo. They probably could have done it more to be honest, but they really didn't. Um, So I'm glad you're trying that lamp. That's good. I saw you do it another time, I think, as well, but
Yeah.
that's good, right? But this situation, not the best call. Okay,
Yeah. No.
right? Um, I wanted you guys to play more aggressive after you windowed to take point
Mhm.
pressure, so that they would have to come out.
That's what I was kind of like hoping like to do too with the lamp, but I don't know, I was way like overshooting it. I feel like.
Yeah, that's okay though. Right. So if they're doing that, then you playing still on this corner is fine, or you rotating over to statue, fine. Um, the corner is probably best, but you need to watch a rotation through hotel, right, on that side, because they were holding hotel,
Hmm.
right? Um, yeah. So looking at this comp, why would we not necessarily want to push here right away onto the store against their comp, like comfy comp? See where they're.
I don't actually know. I'm actually not too sure.
Okay. So, couple things. First of all, our rotation was slow onto point, so we didn't have the pressure from window as much as we could have, right? But that's a very small thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're faster, then it would have been better because we have the pressure from window. You guys tend to sit behind window too much. Like you play behind window, but our team doesn't have to. Like our tanks can go more aggressive, right? And take space with it. And that's something you guys don't do as much as you should.
Okay.
The other thing is, in terms of tanks, theirs want to be in swinging range, right, for Ryan, whereas we have
Okay.
Arissa Seg. So we have better tank range. Okay. Um, we also want them in a position where their Ash or their Echo have to come out to us so we can put more pressure on them, right? So if we push here, we've opened
Oh yeah,
ourselves
they
up
just
more
have.
to that, to that,
Hmm.
to that, right? And potentially to this if they wrap around or something, right?
Yeah.
Um, and in their comp, the enemy comp, what do you think is their kind of counters to lamp?
I would say probably like dynamite and stuff.
Dynamite, yeah. But
Yeah.
Ash and Echo, think about this,
Hmm.
pretty off angle heavy, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for
off
sure.
angles are one of the biggest problems with lamp, right? So if the enemy has a strong off angle or is able to take off angles, then lamp is going to be less effective, right?
Okay.
So if you get lamp here, but the echo's up there, then it's not as effective, right?
Hmm.
One of the reasons I say put lamp here is so that they can't get to it, they can't push it easily, right? But if they have
Yeah.
control of like these high grounds or something, then it's not a great lamp,
Yeah. Then yeah,
right?
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right. So Maywall and off angles are typically what you're thinking about when you're thinking about lamp position, right?
Okay.
Okay. Um, so slow on the rotation to use window to take space. Um, the Rhine difference, Rhine v sig difference, and then the off angles with the it's the Ash, it's the Echo in this case, but then Ash also has like a decent thing, right? Um,
Yeah.
if we're holding like here on point, right? So they have to come to us. Their Rhine has to close that distance, right? But also their Ash has to swing out like this to give value, right?
Yeah.
And that opens her up to more pressure, right? So the wider someone swings around a corner, the more risky it is, the easier it is to punish, right? So if we think about
Okay.
like third point's a good example. So if we think about like third point, and our wrist is sitting here, we're shooting, and Bjorn has to swing wide like this in order to get an angle, or she has
Hmm.
to push up to like Arissa and play with like literally touching Arissa to get like damage on their shield. That's really
Hmm.
risky for her, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if we have like a lamp here and they can't pressure it, and then swinging wide makes a lot more sense, right? And
Yes.
it's not as risky, right? So when I say push wide, because I've been telling you guys to do it more,
Hmm.
it's about the resource advantage you guys have. So if you have more resources, you can sustain the wide push and it's safer, whereas they are going to be looking to kite back a little bit because they have less resources, and we just snowball it. So we keep forcing them to use resources to rotate, and since it's poke versus like a general poke comp, they don't want to do a lot of rotations, right?
Yeah.
So we're forcing them back, forcing them to use resources and pushing our advantage. And then they just have to keep using resources to defend themselves, and they can't use any to take space or to like turn the thing unless they get like a lucky pick or something. But we have the
Hmm.
resources to kind of sustain a wide push, right? So if we
Yeah.
can force them to do a wide push here, where like their Ash has to peek wide to get value onto our shield or something, or they have to push more into the open, just generally speaking, that gives Nimbus more of a chance to hit a headshot or more access to their backline. Um, it makes them closer for pulls. So if we're doing like a pull rock and we could get a squishy with it, right? So just like I'm just talking about angles and playing wide and
Hmm.
stuff. So like it's important for you guys, but if you guys can recognize a situation where they have to push wide, or you see them do something like that, or you can force them to do it, that's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of complicated stuff and kind of situational, but um, you don't have to worry too much about like forcing them to go wide. I just wanted to bring it up so you're aware of it. Um, and if you want something to look at later, that can be something to do. But anyway,
Okay.
um, but anyway, yeah, pushing up here exposes us to more angles, which makes it more risky, right? If we don't do it fast enough. Okay.
Yeah.
If we were here, we played window, they were here, and then they started backing up into hotel, and then as they're backing, we pushed up here, right? So we're pushing them, taking space, applying objective pressure, and then we're forcing more resources out of them, and then we also have a good lamp spot, right? Like anywhere, realistically anywhere's here. Then that's great, right? But we were playing slower,
Yeah.
so it's whatever. Does that all kind of make sense?
Yes, it does make a bit of sense.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. Surprised I actually don't die there.
Going back to your shift usage a little bit, against
Hmm.
their comp, when do you think you should be using shift?
Really, only for like pulls, probably,
Hmm.
or if I get like caught out of position.
Yeah, but we want to try to avoid that, right? We're trying to fix out
Oh
of
yeah,
positioning.
yeah,
But yes, if you
yeah,
need to. Um, so yeah, if they pull, so that could be like in a fight, or it could be in a rotation, right? Um, also, if they look for like a big dynamite play, right?
yeah.
Like
Okay.
if they hit a pull dynamite, that's fine. Um, because sometimes you need that extra burst healing to keep people alive, right? Like I said, like the dynamite fire strike pull, like that could be deadly, right? If they have any extra follow-up damage on that, that's right. So having that extra burst that you can put out with your shift is important. If they have high amounts of burst with a pull, right? So sometimes a pull by itself is not gonna like necessarily be like, oh, I have to shift, right? We want to recognize, okay, can they actually follow up on this pull? Do I need to use shift, right? Because if you don't get pulled and it's just like a random pull and someone rocks your team and they have like no follow up, right? So if it's like Arissa Sig and they pull rock but they have no burst or no follow up, then you don't really need to use shift, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So we're trying to like optimize your usage. So recognizing how can they burst us, what like you should be thinking about what abilities, what situations do I actually need to use shift here, right? And that goes for like literally any abilities or just wanting to improve in general, right? If you want to actively think about it, like before the screen, be like, I want to watch my ability usage, right? And this will go into positioning too. I'll jump into that. But it'd be like, I want to watch my ability usage. Okay, actively thinking, how can I improve my ability usage? How can I improve it? How do I want to use my shift in this case? Well, they have Fire Strike Dynamite. Maybe I want to save it for that, right? Or if I want to, or if the team's working on rotations, maybe I want to save my shift specifically for my rotation, right? And pay more attention to that, right? So actively thinking about it, um, and then going after the scrim, being like, okay, um, did I actually improve on that? Did I use it to the best of my abilities? Um, was there anything I could have changed or done better? Right? And then ask like why? Why could I have done better? How could I have done better? Why was this the wrong play? Why was this the right play? Right? And that's where the self reviews come in.
Mhm.
Okay. And the same thing's for positioning. You want to actively think about it and think about, okay, am I playing the right corners? Am I taking the right space in rotations? Like pick something specific. So if you want to focus on, okay, going into the next couple of scrims, just focus on your position in rotations,
Yeah.
right? Especially when you're playing BAP.
Mhm.
And you want to be behind your tanks, right? And making sure that you're in rotation with them because they should be in front of the damage. No matter where the damage is coming from, they should be in front of it,
Okay.
right? So if they have to stand in the choke for a second to block the damage because it's from like weird angles or something, or there's two different damage sources and they have to stay there to block both, making sure that you are always on the other side of them so that they are taking the damage,
Okay.
right? So just going to the next couple streams, focus on your positioning and rotations. One small thing,
Deal.
right? Um, and then just take like 10 minutes after the scrim, like if you want to take a break, work on homework, whatever. But just take 10, 15 minutes after scrim, watch a map, be like, okay, did I actually improve on that in this scrim or on this map or whatever it is? And if not, well, how could I have done better,
Okay.
right? Or if you didn't do well, I'd be like, okay, awesome, I did well. Why did you do well? Was it your starting position? Were you on time with your countdown? Um, were you just ready to go before your team was, or whatever it happened to be, right? Um,
Mhm.
so don't just focus on the negative. Be like, okay, this was bad. Why was it bad? This was good. Why was it good? Right? Um, and again, just 10, 15 minutes after a scrim at some point. Um, and after you think about it actively and you're like, okay, positioning, positioning, rotations, positioning, positioning, and rotation, blah, 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 right? After you've actively thought about it, it will just become second nature,
Yeah.
right? And it'll just become intuitive. And then you don't have to actively think about it. And then you can think about something else like ability usage or, or how you're aiming, right? Mechanics or something right? Like that's how you improve in games, right?
Okay.
You focus on one thing that you can change scrim to scrim, right? And it could be a one scrim goal, it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, whatever, right? Like you could do a month where you're just like focusing on positioning, and you'd be like, okay, positioning in rotations, positioning in neutral fights, positioning when I have ults, like these sorts of things, right? And then break it down. Um,
Mhm.
but you want to find something specific to work on, and then after whatever time period you set for yourself, be like, okay, did I achieve this? Why not? Blah blah blah, and then it'll become just intuitive, right? And you just think, and then you pick something else, right? Because if you don't have to think
Yeah.
about something, that's time that you don't have to think and you can think about something else. You can think about the enemy salts, right?
Mhm.
Right? So that little bit of that half a second, it's probably less than that to be honest, but if you just do things off of instinct and because you've built those instincts up, it's way better, right?
Mhm.
So, like that's what you should be going for.
Okay.
But yeah, but just going into the next couple scrims, be like,
See, so that lamp I think is pretty good.
yeah. One thing to note,
Since they're off. Sorry.
yeah, no, it is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing to note is you do have to be careful because it does cut off,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, right.
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 So it's either like,
It's wide on sight.
yeah, you have to like either swing wide like this and still be in line with it, or you can put it like actually like on the lamp sort of thing,
Mhm.
like just outside the door, and that will allow you to swing more around, right?
Okay.
And then depending on where they are is gonna depend on like how aggressive you can put it. Because if they're hard holding this corner too, then you put it there, right? Because it
Okay.
won't matter because they have to like they'll either push into you or you're okay because you'll have lamp advantage, right? But that's if they're hard holding this, right? If they're more like back here, then you can get a little more aggressive with it and put it like just under the lamp or just on top, and you can get away with not putting it like exactly in the doorway,
Okay.
right? So little like micro adjustments based on like where they're playing. But yeah, it is a good lamp, right?
Yeah.
It's a fine square. Yeah, like like legit. Don't be afraid to just pop square. Like it
Yeah.
wins fights, right? It's super powerful. Um, And by doing that there, it stops whoever want like it'll first one of the VOD review. There's always one, right? It'll make them think twice before peeking arches if they have someone back here. They're also not
Okay.
going to want to push out this side of hotel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it probably means they're going to come this side, which is what they did.
So yeah, so basically I force them like to make a rotation like in a way that maybe might not be like optimal to them.
Yeah, right.
Cool.
So yeah, don't be afraid to just pop square, and it charges so fast in spam.
Yeah, it does. I mean this this is my second square this fight, so like you know,
Mm.
I get them fast. I get shattered here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah, if you know they have shatter, then like just charge your boots, and you can just cancel
Uh-huh.
it if you need to.
Yeah.
Right, it's not a big deal. It's like frog. Always be on
Yes.
walls.
Okay. They do end this though, yeah.
Yep. So I mentioned cart stuff last night.
Yes, I remember
So
that.
in what case wouldn't what you guys are doing be acceptable in the comp they're running? Because
Mm-hmm.
there are situations in the comp they're running. What situations can you think of would be unacceptable to leave Bjorn cart alone?
Maybe the like Echo could like flank like behind us or um mm, we might need like trans since we have like trans coming up.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't
Um.
want to hurt.
Yeah. So if Echo's still alive or is on a flank, right? Um.
Yeah.
Or if they have a close, or if Echo is spawned close, right? Because Echo can get over the roofs and has a lot of mobility, right?
Yeah.
So that's something you guys have to keep track of. If the Ashe is still alive, like if she's like on the high ground or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Virtually if anyone is still alive, besides like maybe Bap or Mercy, but if someone's still alive, Bjorn shouldn't be on cart by yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing. As for the trance, not versus their comp right now in this situation, but potentially in
Yeah.
other comps.
Okay.
So if we're playing versus like a Blizzard um, or maybe like a Grav or something that's like a really strong um, team fight ultimate, right? And we might
Mm-hmm.
need trans for it, then it might be more acceptable for you to go push cart. Um, so like have her push it up there, and then as our team is like, okay, we want to take a fight early, we want to spam here, have her position up here, and then have you push cart, right? That way you guys can still hold it. And if they try to go aggressive, you have trance. And if we're trancing, chances are we don't need your healing, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that also goes to the point about playing an LOS, right? So if we're
Mm-hmm.
taking a fight on this corner, um, then it's totally acceptable for you or Bjorn to play
Like
here.
all the way back there. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Or one of you pushing cart because we're still in LOS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if someone is alive, then we're in a better position to go peel, right? Because the LOS allows it, right? Once we get past the bookstore, it gets a little more complicated with King's Row. But that LOS is very important when having someone push cart, especially for
Okay.
flex supports because Zen, Ana, right?
Yeah.
It's super important, right? But it's still applicable for you on BAP as well.
Mm-hmm. God, I want to play Anna more. I like Anna.
And it's fun.
Yeah.
Here's your cart thing again. You're jumping on cart
Oh yeah. Yep.
unnecessarily. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just curious, was that to like a lamp to help us like take space and did you want to be aggressive or was that just like a misclick? Because you lamped like
Um,
here. Do you
it was
remember?
okay. Well, I saw that I was like about to like die, so I think I kind of just like
Checked
threw
it.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. It's whatever. Um, yeah, I just wanted to double check. But
Also, I don't know if this is like weird. Like, I think like the reason like why I like sitting like on top of the payload, I think is because of like Team Fortress 2. Honestly, just because as like scout, I was like
yeah.
I'd always just like sit up there
Hmm.
and just like hang out.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Like in a fight like this, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
beneficial to you at
You.
all.
Yeah.
Right? I think you do it towards the end of this point too, and you jump on it and
Yeah.
like they have a recontest or they almost kill you or some shit, right?
Yeah.
I go back a bit further. Do do do. Okay. So right now, this angle that you're taking is too wide,
Yeah. I would agree.
right? You only need to shoot, um, like if you're shooting Arissa, look how much space is between her and the wall. That means that you can cut the angle more, right? Or
Yep.
if you're just shooting the Ryan shield, then you just need to see the sliver of it, and then you pull wide when you have to shoot more, right?
Hmm.
So they go for lamp, and that's fine, right? And you're trying to shoot lamps, so then this angle is more acceptable. But remember, it does leave you more exposed,
Yes.
right? You see that now?
Yep.
Awesome. Um,
I should be kind of playing where like Clay is kind of sort of used,
a
like
little
you're
bit.
saying.
Well, you could
Okay.
also just be like, you don't need to be like hugging the wall here, right?
Yeah,
You
I
could
didn't think so.
you could be like this. Like this would be fine as well,
Okay.
right? Because you can see the Orisa and you can shoot the Orisa. If you want to help shoot the lamp, that's fine, but this is still
Hmm.
dangerous, right? If
Yes.
I was gonna give you like an um, ideal play here, I would say shoot their lamp and lamp the corner aggressively,
I
right?
think that's what I may have like wanted like to do, but I honestly may have just like missed like the wall. I don't remember exactly.
You kind of held it here, so
Yeah, yeah, I
it
did
would
for
be
sure.
like using it would be like just as you guys break theirs or just slightly before, because
Gotcha.
they want to stay with their lamp and they might be more inclined to stay, right? Because they're like, oh, we have lamp, we're fine, right? But that's not the case because it's about to break, right?
Hmm.
So going into that point, that's actually why it's super important that you're calling when you're like right before your lamp breaks,
Okay.
right? Because if we're holding that space and we're like, oh shit, lamp's about to break, right? Like that's important, especially if we're trying to maximize ability efficiency. Um, yeah, yeah. So the ideal play that I would potentially see would be healing, shooting, 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 heal, lamp, maybe like a lamp here, like on their
Gotcha.
pole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would agree.
lamp here, their lamp just broke. The Orisa's committed,
Yep.
right? And the
This is
Ryan's
like
coming in.
hard committing.
Yep. And we are able to punish her.
I should lamp like literally like right now.
Yeah, right? So it's the same thing as like if you see them use a resource and like so if you see their support use a resource and you're matched. So if you're playing BAP and they're playing BAP, you want to hold yours longer so that you can get more efficiency out of it. Same thing here,
Yep.
right?
Kind of like with kind of like with like beat and
Beat.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
other example, like the most common example would be beat. Yeah, hold it as long as possible and then counter with it. That way you
Yep.
get more use out of it. Yep. But exact same thing.
Yep. I think I just like threw it.
Yeah. But again, that's like you're playing close to the corner, you've swung wide, and you're playing
Yeah.
closer to the corner, so you're playing closer to the front line. So either way, you're in line of the window, or you're gonna get like pulled to fire strike, whether you're just playing wide or just playing with the tanks, right? Like on the
Okay.
corner. But at this point, there's no need for you to like open that angle. right? So if you don't need to heal anyone, then you should be shooting. But if they window, you do need to heal, right? So then that means you should just be like kiting to a corner like this to cut off that angle and just healing the tanks, right?
Mhm.
So beginning of the fight, it's fine to shoot. Your team doesn't really need the healing. You're playing wide, you're playing the corner, helping them break lamp. That's good, right? And then as soon as they use like they're using Valk too, yeah. So as soon as they use like window, Valk, damage boosting ults generally, right? Window, Valk,
Yeah.
Bongo, um, maybe Nano, right? Then you're gonna want to cut the angle, so cut off the angle completely, and then just focus on healing, right? And if they
Okay.
push you and they push wider on the corner, then you can look to damage if your tanks don't need healing or someone doesn't need healing, right? But this goes to um, the flow of a fight, right? So we play aggressive, we force our resources. We don't take advantage of it, fine, whatever. They push back with their Valk and Window, right? And then we have to give space, right? So we're pushing, then they counter with ults, and then we have to give space. And then if we survive this, then we'd be pushing back again, right? As the power spike flows between the both teams, right?
Okay.
So it's not really important for this VOD review, but I just wanted to bring it up since we did talk a little bit about it in team stuff, and it's a decent
Mhm.
example.
Yeah. I should not be going for this.
Um, no, you should not. Why though?
Since they had like a mercy like damage boost with the echo, and even if I like did survive, that would involve me forcing myself to use lamp,
Potentially.
and that's yeah.
Okay, so what could your team do to help you do that? Because if we don't want people sitting up here, right? Like if there's
Mhm.
an echo sitting up here, we don't want that, right? So
Mhm.
what could your team do to help you force the echo to back up a little bit?
My only guess would probably be like Hanzo's like Sonic Arrow or something, or maybe
Hanzo,
even like pull like Rock or something.
Poe, or Sig can just give you a shield, right?
Oh yeah,
Any of
yeah,
those, like realistically, any of those are fine, right? Um, right? But we don't want them sitting up here. So you jumping up here in itself is not the biggest problem if we are willing to help you. So if someone's with you, so if Hanzo's with you, or if you get a shield or something, right? And if it's
yeah.
just the Echo and the Mercy, then it's not a big deal, right? Because we can Sig Shield this, or we can take a 2v2 and we're fine, right? And we can just
Okay.
force them out and it's not a big deal. I'm more concerned about the Ashe that was up here,
Yes.
right? 'Cause she had this angle on you. So if we decide to Sig Shield up here, well then she still has this angle on you, jumping up. She can rotate over and help her Echo, right?
Mhm.
So you have to pay more attention to where people are positioned, like your threats, right?
Yes.
Um, so if I'm looking at this comp, I'm thinking, okay, non-ultimate threats: Ashe, Echo, um, Rhine, Orisa with pull. Those are your main threats, right?
Mhm.
The Orisa and Rhine super easy to keep track of, right? As long as you're keeping your spacing, you're like, okay, Orisa's pulling and rotation, blah blah blah, whatever. It pulls easy to see, right? But tracking Ashe and Echo can be a little more difficult, right? But
Yeah.
tracking threats overall is super important and it's really applicable to your positioning because where they're positioned is going to like dictate where you want to position or where you're going to like cut angles from or be more passive or more aggressive, right? Because
Mhm.
if the Ashe and the Echo are dead, then you're going to be more aggressive and you can play with your team, right? Because then you can just be like, okay, I know where the Riss and the Rhine are, easy, right? But if you don't know where the Echo is and everyone's alive, then there's a decent chance she's on a flank, and that leaves you and Bjorn potential targets, right?
Yeah.
So making sure that you're tracking your threats, and you can do that before like every scrim. Be like, okay, I know they have this, right?
Mhm.
And be like, okay, what's a potential threat, and just don't focus on ultimates. Just think about like neutral fight. Who's gonna like one shot me? Who's going to like hard pressure at resources that I need? Who's going to basically deny me value, right? So if someone's on like Anna and the enemy has a Mei and they can just wall you, that's a potential threat, right? Ryan is basically a threat for any squishy because you don't want to get walked on, but right. So you can do that, be like just scouting, just like whenever you're. Um, let's do it. I want you to do that after each round, or not. It doesn't have to be like every round, but like pick a couple rounds after each scrim, and be like, okay, they had this. I was playing Lucio. I was playing Bap. These are my main threats,
Okay.
right? You don't have to tell me, but like write them down or just like think about it. Take a
Yeah.
couple minutes. I'm also gonna make sure that we don't start maps until we fucking are really clear about what we're running.
Yeah. Sometimes we just like don't know, and
Yeah. Well, it's very hard for me to like think when I hear three people talking about like last round. I want to give you guys space to talk, but I also need to
yes.
make sure that you
Oh my
guys are
goodness.
being correct about something. So if you're wrong, I need to make sure that I'm like correcting you guys. And then I'm also trying to think about your guys' comps, and I hear three different comps being called. I'm like, guys, like just stop talking, please. Um,
Speaking with that, like I just yeah, like I feel like sometimes I can't like like talk like enough. I don't know, but that's kind of like off that's kind of off topic.
it's fine.
It
Um,
it really bothers me.
yeah, it's um, yeah, yeah. So I just want you to be like, these are my threats after a couple rounds of scrum or something. Okay.
I can do that.
Um,
Man, like how much were we actually screaming tonight then? Because
yeah. Well, stuff like this is
like
typically done before scrims. Like
yeah.
that's where it has the most effect, but it's it's whatever. Um, so tracking threats. What was the other thing I wanted you to do? Uh,
I don't actually remember.
fuck. Was it rotations? Positioning in rotations. It's
uh,
10 minutes after. Little self reviews.
I don't actually remember.
Whatever. Just watch back the VOD. Um,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was something about positional rotation or position in
Mhm.
rotations. Um, yeah, I'm like 90% sure it was just like watching back a VOD for 5-10 minutes, whatever it was, like a couple maps and be like, okay, this is the rotation. Was I in position? Was I out of position? Why was I in position? Why was I out of position? Um, and just think about that a little bit, and then we'll move on to other positional stuff later. Um, but just watch back the VOD because it's probably at the like 10-15 minute mark ish, I would guess. Um, but I think that's what it was. Anyway, let's keep going. This was one of the weirdest fights this scrim.
Yeah, I remember this fight very very vividly because I remember being kind of like upset because we used like a lot of ults. Like so do they. So like it's not like that, but there's just kind of like there's like a mess.
Yeah.
Like what just like happened?
This is a very messy fight.
Yeah.
Mm.
To be fair, they also used like a lot of ults there.
So you should be off card at this point.
Yes, yes, I should be. When I was just gonna say it. I should not be sitting on it. So, yep, I must die there.
Right? So potentially get picked, but also they're forcing your shift early, right? But both those things are things we've already talked about.
Yep. Try it again. That's a bad lamp. Yep, gets picked off immediately.
Hmm.
We actually lose the fight because of it. Yep. I think I actually keep her alive here.
Always try and window first. You don't want to be
Yep, yep.
windowing second. So that's another example of like the spacing with your tanks, right? You don't need to be right next to them, and because you got hit with the dynamite, and if you're not hit with the dynamite, that means you don't have to use shift. Um, it's free all charge, and you're giving them less all charge. Like you're
Okay.
slowing down their bob build time, right? So there's no reason for you to be like basically where Wisp was is, and their tanks are like right here, right? You could be in
Yeah.
here, you could be over on here, like just back a little bit further, right? Right. So, so spacing between tanks.
Fiona actually dies here. Oh wait, no, no,
And
no,
it's a
I know.
different time.
Yeah, yeah,
60 seconds remaining.
On card again.
yeah. That's such a like bad like habit of mine.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yep.
That's totally from that's totally from like TF2 as well.
Yeah.
I 100% guarantee it. Oh my god, we get wiped. I don't think we actually capped this either.
I don't think so. Up here, in here, right? If you guys are stuffing, then you can position up on boxes, but try
Yeah.
to avoid being like anywhere here, right?
I don't think I remember calling to stuff. I think I remember like just calling like to dragon super early.
Yeah, no one called this stuff, which is I would have, but it's whatever.
Yeah, I should have. I should have.
Um, yeah, especially with no ones. Yep. But yeah, your position is probably gonna end up being more like up here. You could end up back here as well, but it's still, that angle. This is safer because you have decent LS on to the team. You can drop and help them really quickly. Less people come out of that right side door, but if one does, you can still pressure them and you have the cover to peek. You also have the potential to make a play here,
Okay.
right? So that's not going to happen often, but if someone's here, so like if Nimbus comes up here or something and you're like, okay, we need to like make a play, right? Clay or Hammer falls early, you're like, fuck, I want to make a play. Let's look around, look for a flank, look for some equalizing kills or something,
Okay.
right? Or we have trance. Here's another situation. We have trance, and you have window, and then you and Nimbus come up here, and you just fucking window this shit, right? And you just destroy
Okay.
this doorway, right? No, seriously,
Okay.
destroy it, right? Like they can't kill you. And if you're really worried
Okay.
about it, you lamp it, and they can't do jack shit
Yeah.
about it, right?
You're
And then
right.
the trance is for the tanks on part, right?
Hmm.
So put yourself in a position to make a play, whether that's like killing people with window or whatever, or saving people with lamp, right? Right? But you're still cutting off LOS for potential threats. You do need to be careful if someone pushes this, but most of the teams you guys play are not going to. You guys probably should do it more.
Yeah.
Realistically, you guys should like retake from here. So if they're on like, if they're like over here, then retaking from up here is actually gonna be more beneficial than like trying to hold this shit. Like this isn't great. This isn't a great angle. It's
Yeah.
kind of rough at times. So having someone come this way or rotate up here, plus good lamp spots. I don't know if they can actually shoot lamp if it goes up
I think
here.
they can. I don't think it goes that high.
Yeah, plus it's angled. They probably can.
Yeah.
But you still have like the pillar, right?
Yep.
You have pillars, you have walls. You could toss it in here and you're fine, right?
Yep.
So this could be an angle that like you, Clay, and Nimbus could take or something, right?
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else is just holding like over here. They'd be on this side, yeah, right? Like there's lots of little things you guys can do, but this side is underutilized a lot. And I don't think any teams that you guys are gonna play, or very many teams you're gonna play, are gonna make as much use of it as they really should.
Yeah.
But you guys can make more use of it, and you can position here on the attack to deny that sideline on that left door, have sidelines on the right one, heal your team, whatever. But also you're in a position, right, to make a play.
30 seconds remaining.
Yeah, and it cuts out there.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna stop it there because it's about an hour, and
Okay.
I don't want to give you like 2 hours worth of stuff if we're not
Yeah.
going into a scrim tonight.
I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Um, like if we had a scrim tonight, then I would totally do it, and then you'd have time to like review it, think about it, whatever. Um, so whatever the first thing I said, I think it was about positional rotations. So focusing on positional rotations going into this next week, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna hard focus that.
yeah. Um, also like just take 5-10 minutes, just look after the scrim or whatever, like whenever you have time, because it's a really
Yeah.
quick thing to do, and it's not like you don't, when you look at a scrim, you don't need to be like break everything down in detail and look at everything. Like that's not what VOD reviews you want to do with them. Break them down into
Hmm.
manageable pieces that are actually helpful and what you actually want to work on, right? If you try
Yeah.
to like focus on like, oh, positioning, alt usage, fucking rotations, alt tracking, like other macro shit, like you're not gonna have a beneficial like VOD review realistically, right? It can
Hmm.
be very hard to take what you learned if you focus on all of that shit and put it actually into practice and work on it, right? So just
Yeah.
little manageable pieces is totally fine. Um, so the rotations, uh, and the tracking threats, right? So those are just two things that you can do really easily. So track threats, that'll be after a round, after a map, just in your head thinking about it. Again, that could be you can look over reviews and do that the same thing like 10-15 minutes, like that's super quick and easy.
Hmm.
You could go watch like an owl game and be like, okay, um, so like their main sport's playing Lucio. What are the threats on the enemy team? Blah blah blah.
Hmm.
Right. Try to focus on non-ultimate threats though. Just try to think of like neutral or potential, ability threats or some shit.
Yeah.
But those are two main things going into the next like week, maybe two. Probably it's probably big enough to focus on over 2 weeks. But on the second week, we'll probably transition to something else. Um, And then all the other like little things we talked about, like lamps, angles, playing wide, pushing aggressively, blah blah blah, whatever.